Drive safe. Get ready to turn left. Turn left. Keep left and then turn left. Turn left. Here we are, safe and sound.
Okay, and
Time to hit the road.
we're gonna start with
Never mind. I'll find a new route.
California for altitude container, and in about almost 600 miles. And we're gonna start. So we're gonna start and the military, and so we are about next week is going to be online according to my iPhone. So all 12 members are going to need everybody's food and we're able to water bottles the new times of the top next week. So that's I'm a reminder that you guys. So I will make a post in the morning. Just wanted to go So it's out to us. So, so that's like, before the ride, and, what's the break, y'all look up on, there's the International Prostar.
Turn right. Keep right, and then turn right. Turn right. Keep left, and then turn left. Turn left. turn left. Keep right, and then continue straight on. Go straight on. Go straight on. exit right. Turn right, and then turn left. Turn left. Get ready to turn right. Turn right. Finally, we are here. Let's do this. right. Turn right. Get ready to turn left. Turn left. Okay, let's find a new route. Turn right. Get ready to turn right. Turn right.
Houston Public Media helps nonprofits tell their stories through Community Catalyst. Learn about the needs in our community through data from Understanding Houston and meet Houston area nonprofits making a difference at HoustonCommunityCatalyst.org.
Our senior politics reporter, Andrew Schneider, reminding you that your support makes All Things Considered and Marketplace possible when you give a donation. We rely on you for your support, just like you rely on us for trusted news, important analysis, quality programs. It's all made possible by people just like you who have already made their donations. Now will you add yours right now? 888-909-0887 to give, or main point is for you to get involved, for you to make that decision to give. Our station is available to you because of other people who made that decision. Most of our funding comes from individual people. We'd love to add you to the list right now. Give us a call, 888-909-0887. Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Deloitte. Unlocking innovation takes more than AI or cloud. It takes outcome-focused application too. Learn more at deloitte.com/us/innovate.
CPI and ECB are the 6 letters of choice today from American Public Media. This is Marketplace. In Los Angeles, I'm Kyle Frisnell. It is Thursday, today the 11th of April. Good as always to have you along. CPI, of course, yesterday's not so great, but also not completely unexpected update on consumer inflation in this economy and related, what it might mean for what the Fed is going to do on interest rates. Keep them higher for longer. ECB, the European Central Bank, which said this morning
right,
in much
and
nicer
then
words,
exit right.
it doesn't much care what the Fed does, and that it's thinking it might cut rates in June.
Exit right.
So, Marketplace's Kristen Schwab spent some time today thinking about central bank choreography.
Usually, major central banks move together by default. Bill English is a finance professor at Yale.
Policy is often kind of correlated because there are big global shocks that matter.
Big global shock is basically the definition of a pandemic. We all know about the high inflation that came with it in nearly all advanced economies.
Keeps left.
And some regions have been able to cool it faster than others. A year ago, inflation in the US was 5%. In the European Union, it was more than 8%. Now inflation's been rising again here, and the EU is edging closer to its target, which brings the European Central Bank to a bit of a fork in the road. On the one hand,
If the economies are diverging, there's no particular reason why you want to have the central banks doing the same thing.
if the ECB waits for the US to cut interest rates, it could depress spending too much and force a recession. On the other hand, if the ECB feels like it has some wiggle room, waiting might help its end game.
If you don't make the move at similar time, there is some potential risk.
Wen Shindu is a finance professor at Columbia. She says cutting rates significantly earlier than the US could shift the exchange rate. If the euro depreciates, import prices might rise, and as a result, so could inflation.
The depreciation pressure in their home country might work against all this effort against fighting inflation.
Now, central bank coordination matters less to the U.S. Ken Kuttner, an economist who's worked at the New York and Chicago
Keep
Fed,
right,
says the Federal
and then
Reserve
exit
can act
right.
on its own with fewer consequences.
Since the U.S. is the 400-pound gorilla in financial markets.
Still, central bank
Exit
officials
right.
here and abroad must call each other, right? And chat about the data points of the day.
I never rose to the rank of the Federal Reserve to know whether that's the case.
We do know they gather at International Monetary Fund meetings. The next one is next week. I'm Kristen Schwab for Marketplace.
April. Spring is in the air. Daffodils and cherry trees, lilacs are blooming. For us, not to spoil the mood too terribly much, it also means earnings season. Corporate profit and loss reveals for the January to March quarter kicked off in earnest yesterday. Delta Airlines did quite well indeed. The first big sector to report en masse is the mega banks. JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and Citigroup tomorrow. Goldman Sachs Monday, Bank of America, and Morgan Stanley on Tuesday. What then do you suppose they have in store for us, and what might that say about the economy and interest rates and the all-important American consumer? Marketplace Mitchell Hartman lays that out for us.
Banks are kind of like economic diagnosticians. They assess the health of companies and consumers as they take in deposits, lend money on credit cards and business expansions, manage corporate mergers and stock offerings.
Banks really are bellwethers of the economy.
Karen Petru is managing partner in Federal Financial Analytics.
Biggest issues for the larger banks, interest rates, which I know are going to be higher for longer, and that helps to improve bank earnings.
Because the banks make more money on the interest they charge borrowers. But Petru says there's also a downside to interest rates staying high: credit losses. As consumers keep Tracy Crosby at LPL Financial.
We know that the low-wage earners are having difficulty. What we're looking for now hasn't crept up the wage scale. Middle-income wage earners with late payments or delinquency.
In the last round of earnings, back in January, banks were warning about a possible recession and how interest rate cuts could hurt the bottom line. Fast forward 3 months, and the focus is on the Fed keeping interest rates high in an economy healthy enough to keep consumers spending it up. I'm Mitchell Hartman for Marketplace.
Wall Street on this Thursday, all that inflation-induced agita yesterday. We'll have the details when we do the numbers. You make a pretty good case that women's sports have at the very least cracked the glass ceiling. Last Sunday, the NCAA Women's Basketball Championship was the most watched basketball game, college or pro, men or women, since 2019. And one hopes it will let those athletes take better advantage of the new economic reality in college sports, name, image, and likeness deals, NIL for short, which have been legal since 2021. And in that time, a whole university ecosystem has grown up around those deals to facilitate them. Austin Meek wrote about NIL management at The Athletic the other day. Welcome to the program. Hi, Kai. So, name, image, likeness, as I described above, is really good for the athletes. I want to understand the colleges and universities, their motivations for this. So how do they approach this whole, sort of newish challenge?
Well, NIL, since it became legal 3 years ago, has become a huge part of recruiting and retaining the best players.
Keep left.
Schools want to succeed on the field, they need to have competitive NIL programs.
So what does, I mean, you won't know the nitty-gritty, but a typical day for a school NIL general manager is what? Like making phone calls to brands and trying to hook these kids up? What do they try to do?
Yeah, and talking to some general managers, I got the sense there really is no such thing as a typical day for them. Every day is different. So it's a lot of conversations with brands and sponsors, conversations with donors, with athletes, trying to stay on top of a legal environment that seems to be changing every day. And really now especially with the transfer portal in college sports that allows players to transfer almost at any time, it really is a day-to-day type of thing to make sure that schools are providing everything they can in terms of NIL support to keep players at their school.
This obviously empowers the student athletes. It seems to be kind of a pain in the neck for the schools, right? That they have to manage all this stuff now, and it's a competitive challenge for them.
Well, it definitely makes their lives more complicated. So there's an old system and a new system that are kind of happening at once, and the schools are in the middle of this, trying to figure out how to get as much money as they can to their athletes while not being able to pay them directly. And so all of that money now is getting funneled through NIL, and it places huge importance on NIL. It creates a big challenge for the schools to try to get as much NIL money for their players as they can.
There was a great piece in the New York Times the other day, actually, a data analytics piece, not a sports piece, on how the basketball players in the tournament that just ended were getting paid. And there's everything from it wasn't trail mix, but it was like some granola or something that one kid was getting money for, and there's all kinds of stuff that these schools are trying to hook these players up with.
Yeah, it really runs the gamut from a sponsorship with the local car dealership to a national ad campaign with Gatorade. If you think about Caitlin Clark, basketball star in Iowa, she has a huge platform. Millions of people watched her games. The ratings were off the charts. So there's huge value in that for brands, for sponsorships, and for schools. They want to put their athletes in position to benefit from all of that because it helps both. It helps the player and it also helps the schools make sure they can get the best players.
We should say here, not to turn this into an NIL primer, but there is, depending on the player, like Caitlin Clark and some of the other really high-profile players, there's a lot of money on the line here that these schools are funneling is a little pejorative, but are guiding toward these players.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the exact role of the school in that is one of the really complicated parts of this, because some of the entities that are involved in NIL, whether it's consulting firms or third-party collectives, they have kind of a weird relationship with the school where they're not directly affiliated with the school, but they're working really closely together. And obviously, the has a big interest in providing the infrastructure for athletes to be able to take advantage of this while not really directly facilitating it. So it gets really, really complicated, and I think all of the schools are really struggling to figure out how best to do that.
Yeah, it seems we've traded one thorny issue, should students be paid, for another thorny issue, how should we get those students paid, right?
Yeah, and I think everybody believes in the near future there will be a system where schools can directly compensate their athletes, but we're just not there yet. And so for the moment, it all has to go through NIL, and that makes it just really complicated.
Right. Austin Meek at The Athletic talking NIL. Austin, thanks a lot. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Let's do the numbers. Dow Industrials off 2 points. Yes, count them, 2 less than a 100th of 1%, 38,459 for the blue chips today. The Nasdaq added 271 points, 1 7/10%, 16,442. The S&P 500 picked up 38 points, 0.75%, 51 and 99. It is, as I said earlier, earnings season. Delta Airlines helped kick it off by beating analyst estimates pretty handily. Delta soared 3% higher today. On the other hand, not such good news for CarMax. It reported earnings were down from the same time a year ago. Shares had slipped just shy of 9.25%. Home furnishing brand Lovesac, ticker symbol LUVE. What's LUV? Anybody know that one? I'll answer that one tomorrow. Anyway, LOVE slid 11 2/10% today after reporting projected sales below analyst expectations. You are listening to Market Minutes.
And at 6:45 on a Thursday evening, you are with your NPR station, News 88.7. Back out to the roads we go. Looks like they are moments away from clearing that wreck on the North Loop, eastbound 610 at the Hardy. 2 left lanes now kind of squeezing by. That'll be 20 minutes from Shepherd to 69 East X. Southbound 69 Southwest Freeway portion of that, the wreck at Buffalo Speedway has cleared, as has the one heading in on the Katy eastbound I-10 before Washington. That'll be about a 20-minute drive to get from 610 to 45.
Support comes from UT Health Houston, home to maternal fetal specialist Dr. Jerry Waforzo, who helps keep moms and babies healthy and safe through high-risk pregnancies and births. More at uth.edu/manyfaces.
Support comes from Comcast Business, partnering with companies to help keep their business moving by offering a network of cybersecurity solutions and round-the-clock support. Powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. ComcastBusiness.com.
And support comes from you, our loyal listeners. I'm Laurie Ramirez. I'm Executive Director for Content Operations here at Houston Public Media. Our senior politics reporter, Andrew Schneider, is with me. Of course, you're listening to Marketplace, you're listening to Houston Public Media, and you're listening to local news teams providing you updates about what's going on right here in your community, your neighborhood, your area, your part of town. You've heard David Pittman giving you local traffic reports, local weather reports. It's all about serving you, serving the Houston audience, and you specifically. We'd love to hear from you. How are we not serving you? How could we be doing better? What are we missing? What are the stories we're missing? What are the things we should be talking about? Help us out by improving our coverage, and help us out by making a donation right now when you call 888-909-0887.
Yeah, this is a constant topic of conversation in our newsrooms. How can we do a better job of serving? How can we be more focused on the Houston area and Harris County and the surrounding counties? And one of the things that we've managed to do in recent months is we've added a first ever local bureau expanding out to the Fort Bend area with Natalie Weber. Fort Bend is one of the fastest growing counties and certainly one of the most diverse counties in the nation, and this enables us to provide more local coverage of developments in politics, in education, in a whole wealth of different areas, and that is down to you. We would not be able to do that without your support. Call or text 888-909-0887, donate online at HoustonPublicMedia.org, and support your public media station.
And speaking of our Fort Bend County Bureau, Andrew, we just got a donation a couple minutes ago from Patricia in Sugar Land. Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you, Patricia.
We'd love to hear it, and we hope you're checking out our folks work tirelessly. I have seen the dedication and the effort that our teams put in to bringing you the highest quality news and shows that you have come to expect, to keeping our technology up to date, to keeping us on the air, to helping when we have software malfunctions and equipment failures, putting in nights and weekends, keeping the whole thing going, doing an amazing job. And we're asking you to keep this station thriving and growing into the future with your support right now. When you become an Always member, your monthly gift is turned into news coverage. It's turned into stories about things that matter to you. It's turned into programs like Houston Matters and I See You that enrich your life. So please stop for a moment and think about the value that this station brings to you and what you can give to support that into the future. Go online to HoustonPublicMedia.org to make a gift or give us a call, 888-909-0887.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Risdall. Here's a tidbit from the March jobs report we got last Friday. Leisure and hospitality is back. 49,000 new jobs last month in hotels, bars, and restaurants. That puts that slice of employment in this economy back above where it was in 4 times. But how people get paid for doing those jobs in bars and restaurants is something of an issue. Specifically, how and how much should tipped workers be paid by their employers? It's an issue because it's a tough industry. Margins are small, and the pandemic did outsized damage. In more than a dozen states, restaurateurs and worker advocates are at odds over how those cooks and servers and other staff ought to be compensated. Marketplace's Sabrina Benishore has the first of 2 reports.
Rather than his real name, we're going to call him Joseph. This topic is such a lightning rod that he's fearful for his job if he talks about it and tells a story about it. He is a waiter at a restaurant in New York, running between about a dozen tables. Take a look. I'll be right back, okay? The food is New American. The World Trade Center is with it. And the prices, well, the burgers cost almost $30. Working at a restaurant, Joseph tells me later on Zoom, is an erratic way to make a living.
During our busy season, I kind of have a full schedule, so that could range from 28 to 40 hours. During the winter time, when it's a little bit slower, it can go down by a lot to 10 hours a week.
Much of his erratic paycheck goes to something very constant.
If my income was spread evenly year-round, half of my paycheck for that month goes straight to rent.
In New York, minimum wage is $16 an hour. Like in many states, restaurants don't actually have to cover all of that. They can let some of Joseph's tips count towards that minimum wage. And usually, the tips more than cover it.
On my regular check is typically like 29 to 33 an hour.
This is how things work in 43 states. Minimum wages range from $16 an hour down to just over $7. This system has different names based on how people feel about it. The technical name is the tip credit system, or tipped minimum wage. Saru Jayaraman calls it the sub-minimum wage.
The sub-minimum wage for tipped workers is a direct legacy of slavery.
Jayaraman is president of the One Fair Wage campaign, which is pushing to end the tip credit system.
It was created after emancipation to allow restaurants to hire newly freed black women, not pay them, and force them to live on a new thing that had just arrived in Europe called tips.
Jayaraman says the system whereby restaurants can use tips to cover part of their minimum wage obligations is a source of poverty for a workforce that is overwhelmingly women.
It's also been a source of the highest rates really of sexual harassment in any industry because these women have to put up with so much in order to get tips.
Jayaraman wants all restaurants to pay full minimum wage with tips on top. That, she says, would create a big pay bump for tip workers. There are bills or ballot measures that would do this in a dozen states, including New York.
Eliminating the tip credit in New York would be absolutely devastating.
Andrew Ritchie is head of the New York City Hospitality Alliance. According to its survey, 88% of restaurants in New York believe eliminating the tip credit would be a disaster.
In response, restaurants would have to significantly increase their prices on consumers who are already price sensitive, and that would result in many cases in them maybe tipping less.
There are 7 states that have long banned the tip credit: Alaska, California, Minnesota, Montana, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington. According to data collected from around 100,000 restaurants by payment service provider Toast, people in these states do tip less, but
houstonpublicmedia.us.com. And by Deloitte. Advancing the future takes more than a business angle or a technology angle. It takes both. Learn more at deloitte.com/US/engineering advantage. And by C3 Generative AI. Verified, traceable answers, secure, hallucination-free, LLM-agnostic, IP liability-free. Learn more at c3.ai.
This final note on the way out today, and bear with me here for a second. Back in 2017, as Bitcoin and crypto and blockchain were kind of becoming the new thing,
Finding
there was
a
a
new
beverage
route.
company in New York called Long Island Iced Tea. Fine so far, right? Well, it changed its name to Long Blockchain Corporation, and its shares spiked more than 200% just on the superficiality of the name change. Since delisted, I should tell you, amid a flurry of insider trading charges, but that's not this. Anyway, shares of Rent the Runway were up 220% today after the company said it's going to start using AI as a key part of its growth strategy. Caveat emptor, people. Caveat emptor, that's all I'm saying. John Buckley, John Gordon, Noya Carr, Diane Parker, Amanda Peter, and Stephanie Seek are the Marketplace editing staff. Amir Babawi is the managing editor. I'm Kai Rizdal. We will see you tomorrow, everybody. This is APN.
We're coming up on 6:57 on a Thursday afternoon, and you're listening to your NPR station, News 88.7. One last look at the drive home, North Loop 610 eastbound at the Hardy. They cleared that wreck about 2 minutes ago. You will be looking at about a 40-minute drive if you're trying to make the entire stretch from Shepherd to 69 East Tennessee. 81 degrees right now here at the UH campus, and this weather update sponsored by Paul D. Quote, attorney, mediator, arbitrator. We're about 50 minutes away from sunset. I should be better with my clock math. It's happening at 7:47, so that is 15 minutes away from now. Clear overnight with a low around 56. Tomorrow sunrise at 6:57, so 12 hours from now. We'll get up to a high near 79 under sunny skies, dead on average high. Then on Saturday, mostly sunny and breezy, high around 80, and much more the same on Sunday. This is your NPR station, KUHF Houston, News 88.7, service of the University of Houston.
And a service that's made possible by you, the listener. You're listening to Marketplace here on Houston Public Media, News 88.7. Of course, we have the Daily coming up in just a couple of minutes. But right now, we're asking for your support. I'm Laurie Ramirez. I'm here with Andrew Schneider. What if you could ensure unbiased reporting, thought-provoking shows like ICU, Houston Matters, and Party Politics? What if you could ensure that those would be available for free to the entire community? Well, guess what? You can. They are. They are free to everyone who listens, but they're not free to make. They're not free to produce. We're asking for your support to make it possible for us to continue bringing you essential news, reporting, and storytelling, and information and inspiration about the Houston region. Show that support right now. Go online to houstonpublicmedia.org or call us at 888-909-0887 and make your donation.
Thanks, Lori. I think I speak for the team here at Houston Public Media when I say we work for Houston. We're here for you. We do what we do for you, and that's rain, shine, hurricane, or freeze. It's scary to think we're now a little less than 2 months out from hurricane season, and we're as we've been covering here in Houston Public Media, they're expecting a more active than normal season. We will be here for you as that unfolds. Our team strives to report on the issues that matter to you, stories that impact your life and the lives of your neighbors and friends. So support journalism that keeps our community informed. Call or text 888-909-0887. When you text the word GIVE to 888-909-0887, and we'll get you set up.
That's right. You count on Houston Public Media to keep you and your family informed. And we're counting on you to show your support of the news and programming with your financial gift. If you give and become an always member, meaning a monthly gift that is sustained, comes out of your account or your credit card every month, if you do that right now, it will be matched by Cindy Weatherly in loving memory of Jim Weatherly. So thank you so much, Cindy. We appreciate that. And good for the Houston region. Thank you for your support.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Spear. FBI Director Christopher Wray is again calling on Congress to renew a key warrantless foreign surveillance program before it expires next week. But to reauthorize the program remains tied up in the House. More from NPR's Ryan Lucas.
Testifying before a House subcommittee, Wray reminded lawmakers that the clock is ticking to renew Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. The law allows the government to collect the electronic communications of foreigners overseas, even when they're talking to Americans. Wray says letting the program lapse would be dangerous for national security.
It will massively increase the risk of missing crucial intelligence during a time of heightened national security threats across a whole multiple front.
A vote to move forward on renewing the law failed in the House earlier this week as lawmakers continue to fight over what sort of changes, if any, should be made. Ryan Lucas, NPR News, Washington.
The Biden administration is urging countries to stop arming the warring sides in Sudan a year into a conflict that has uprooted millions of people. NPR's Michelle Kellerman reports the U.S. and Saudi Arabia are trying to revive peace talks.
5 years ago, a popular uprising forced out Sudan's longtime ruler and U.S. ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, says the country had a taste of freedom. But a year ago, two rival generals started a civil war that has devastated Sudan.
As communities barrel toward famine, as cholera and measles spread, as violence continues to claim countless lives, the world has largely remained silent. And that must change, and it has to change now.
She blames Sudan's armed forces for aid being blocked and accuses a rival paramilitary force of gang rapes and mass killings. The U.S. says countries sending weapons to them must stop. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
The Biden administration has finalized a rule aimed at boosting renewable energy development on public lands. NPR's Nathan Watt reports roughly 20% of the country's power comes from renewable sources.
The Biden administration has set a goal of decarbonizing the country's energy sector by 2035. Climate warming fossil fuels still provide roughly 60% of the nation's electricity. A new rule by the Bureau of Land Management seeks to change them by reducing the cost of solar and wind projects on public lands and improving the application process. The Interior Department, which houses the BLM, says it has now permitted more than 25 gigawatts of renewable energy projects, enough to power more than 12 million American homes. Crude oil production in the U.S. has also hit all-time highs under the Biden administration, frustrating climate and environmental groups. Nathan Rott, NPR News.
The pickup in the tech sector helped stocks take back some of the ground they lost yesterday. The NASDAQ was up 271 points today. You're listening to NPR. Scientists in Australia are assessing damage to the Great Barrier Reef. Corals there have bleached due to high ocean temperatures. Climate change threatening the future of reefs. Scientists are trying to breed corals that can handle more heat. There's Lauren Freyer with more on summer weather. Here's that story.
Humans have selectively bred a lot of things, crops, dogs, and now that technique is being used for conservation. At the Australian Institute of Marine Science, scientists are breeding corals with a natural ability to handle heat. They seem to resist bleaching or turning white, which is what causes corals to die if it goes on too long. The hope is to use these super corals to restore reefs. But coral scientist Lena Bay says that doesn't mean it's a long-term solution.
We can't let our atmosphere and oceans continue to warm
90% of the criminal cases brought against him until it looks like, for now, after voters are going to decide whether or not to re-elect him, which, if it stays that way, would be a pretty astonishing accomplishment of a kind in, I'd argue, both a legal and a political sense.
Yeah, it would be a remarkable subversion of the normal course of justice. And one of the places where we've seen this in like the starkest terms is in Trump's classified documents case in Florida. This is the case in which Trump has been charged with taking home from the White House a trove of extremely classified documents containing all kinds of national defense secrets about military capabilities, nuclear programs, right, and storing them in crazy places in his home in Mar-a-Lago down in Palm Beach, Florida.
Right, I'm remembering the photos. I mean, stages, bathrooms, closets.
Yes, and on top of that, the government has accused him of obstructing this long attempt, this repeated attempts by the authorities to get that stuff back. In some sense, this case is the strongest criminal case that has been brought against Trump. The facts are, at least alleged by the government, are pretty damning. Not to mention, he's caught on a recording at one point showing some of this material to other people in Mar-a-Lago and saying to them, hey, I shouldn't be showing you this stuff because it's classified.
Right. A prosecutor's dream.
Yeah, in many ways.
So, Alma, this seemed like perhaps the strongest of the 4 criminal cases against Trump. What exactly is the story of how he and his lawyers have delayed it to the point where it does not appear that there will be a trial before November, before the election?
Well, look, in short, Trump's lawyers have raised a series of far-fetched defenses, and the judge in this case has really engaged with these defenses and entertained these arguments in a way that, frankly, I don't think most federal judges would have.
So tell us about both Trump's tactics and about this judge.
We can do both at the same time, Michael. So let's not forget that the first big public event of this case was a search of Mar-a-Lago, Trump's private residence in Palm Beach in Florida. And the consequences of that search fall into the hands of a very unusual judge who catches this case. Her name is Elaine Cannon. She was appointed by Trump himself in Trump's waning days in office, and she is a young judge and checks all the boxes, Federalist Society, and clerked for a conservative judge herself. But while she may have had all the right kinds of experience, she just didn't have a lot of experience. So at the moment that she inherits this case in August of 2022, she's only been on the bench 2 years. She's had a sum total of 14 trial days over the course of 4 trials. She's only had 4 trials. Wow. And so she is the person who kind of inherits this enormous case involving, at that point, an FBI search of a former president's residence. And really, right from the beginning, Trump's lawyers just throw everything they can at this search warrant issue, trying to bog the entire investigation down. And they end up challenging the search in a really weird way. They say because Trump is a former president, he has executive privilege over all the material that the FBI took out of Mar-a-Lago. And so the lawyers want Judge Cannon not only to appoint an independent arbiter to sort through all that material and sort of take out the innocuous stuff from the stuff that's highly privileged, they want the judge to essentially interfere in this case to the point of freezing the FBI's investigation entirely until this independent arbiter's work is done.
So that's a very ambitious request. Trump's lawyers want a major FBI investigation into a former president, very high profile, to just go on ice while some legal figure sorts through paper to see if something's in there that shouldn't be.
Yes, exactly. And lo and behold, Judge Cannon grants this request. She freezes the case. But the appellate court that sits over Judge Cannon, the 11th Circuit, very quickly and very forcefully smacks her down and reverses her. And essentially says, look, rule of law. You can't just make an exception in this case because the guy happens to be a former president. That's not how U.S. works.
But in the meantime, there has been a delay of several weeks in a case where every day, every week counts.
Yes, that's exactly right. So this was like the prelude to the main event, so to speak. This is before the indictment against Trump was filed. But we've seen very much the same dynamic play out through the totality of the case once the indictment was formally brought. Trump's lawyers start submitting just a barrage of motions to Judge Cannon in this case. They make a really out there motion to kind of rummage through the communications of all these various national security officials because they want to prove that the deep state collaborated in order to bring this case against Trump. They're filing motions saying like politicians and public figures have found classified documents, in their possession, but they were never charged. And Trump is being singled out unfairly as the only guy who's been charged in this case.
So they're burying Judge Cannon in paper.
They are burying her in paper. And so one of the most unorthodox arguments that they make in a motion to Judge Cannon is one to dismiss the case altogether because of a law known as the Presidential Records Act.
Turn left.
Okay. And here you're going to have to educate us.
Yeah,
Get
so
ready
the
to turn right.
Gloss on the Presidential Records Act is that it was passed after Watergate to essentially ensure that most records created during a president's time in office remain in the possession of the government. They go to the National Archives. And while the law does sort of permit presidents to lay personal claim to things like diaries they kept while in office or notes or stuff of an obvious personal nature, the point is that the people, through the government and the archives, own the official records of a presidency.
That seems like it would be a law that would be very bad for Trump in this case.
Right, except he has flipped this law entirely on its head in his defense. He argued in a motion that was filed at the end of February that under the small section of the law that allows presidents to designate records as personal, he has designated all of this super secret, highly classified military and defense records as personal and his own property.
Make a U-turn
and to make
when
matters
possible.
even a little stranger,
Rerouting.
he's not saying that he issued a proclamation or wrote a formal notification that he did this. He's saying the fact that he took these records out of the White House to his home in Florida de facto shows you that they are his, because if they weren't his, he would have given them back.
And so how does Judge Cannon respond to this innovative, unexpected, unorthodox motion?
Well, look, the fact is that most federal judges, when presented with this claim, would have dismissed it out of hand, would not have held a hearing, would not have entertained it, would have said, thank you, Mr. Trump, for your argument, motion denied. But Judge Cannon decides to take it quite seriously, and that has the effect not just of further delaying the process as she decides how to grapple with this argument, but also it sets up the possibility that she could kill this case altogether without it ever going in front of a jury.
We'll be right back.
Go straight on.
The Daily is supported by C3 Generative AI. C3 Generative AI enables rapid access to secure, traceable, hallucination-free insights from enterprise systems, all while using any LLM, helping enterprises turn the invisible into the obvious. Learn more at c3.ai. And by the new investigative podcast, She Has a Name. It explores the disappearance of Anita, a young mother from Detroit
Detroit, who mysteriously vanished in 1987. Hosted by the co-host of Fresh Air, Tanya Mosley. Listen now to She Has a Name wherever you get your podcasts. And by American Public Media.
This is News 88.7. From the debate over parking meter enforcement times in the city of Houston to the demolition of the Reality Bites house, this week's non-expert panel weighs in on intrigues in the news, on the good, the bad, and the ugly, on the next Houston Matters. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock here on News 88.7.
Support comes from Pearland, Texas, supporting innovation in business, science, healthcare, energy, and inspiring their citizens. More on innovation and inspiration in Pearland at pearlandedc.com/innovation. Pearland, innovation lives here.
Houston Public Media helps nonprofits tell their stories through Community Catalyst. Learn about the needs in our community through credible data from Understanding Houston and meet Houston area nonprofits making a difference at HoustonCommunityCatalyst.org.
Support comes from Tacamara with a new work by composer Matthew Lemoy and director Peter Sellers. Music for New Bodies with 5 vocal soloists and an ensemble of 18 musicians. April 20th at Rice's Rockland Hall for Opera. Tickets at Tacamara.com.
For Donald Trump, 2024 was supposed to be dominated by criminal trials. Instead, he's found ways to delay almost all of them. And I'm calling Alan Ford on how Trump did it. Alan, at this point in our story, this case of Trump and the missing classified documents is delayed, and now Judge Cannon is engaging with this very unusual argument that Trump can almost wordlessly authorize himself to take classified materials home from the White House. I have to imagine that federal prosecutors are trying to fight this in every way imaginable.
Yes, they hate this claim, and they are absolutely fighting it every which way they can. Let's not forget, the person in charge of the prosecution at this point is the special counsel, Jack Smith, who was brought into the case really when Trump announced he was running for president. So there was sort of, some independence from the Justice Department.
Right.
And so what Smith does when confronted with this argument advanced by Trump is, of course, he files a motion trying to oppose Trump's motion to dismiss. And at the hearing, his prosecutors are telling Judge Cannon, this is not what the Presidential Records Act says. Trump has this wrong. The idea that he could sort of wordlessly transform this material into his own personal property is absurd, and you should just get rid of this argument altogether. And what's interesting is that for a moment there, it really looked like Cannon was going to rule against Trump's Presidential Records Act defense. But then, a few days after the hearing, she made an extremely unusual move. And what she did was she asked both sides, defense and prosecution, to write jury instructions that sort of adopted Trump's Presidential Records Act defense. Just as a basic matter, jury instructions are generally decided on the eve of a trial. So it's weird to me thinking about how to instruct a jury when the jury hasn't even been selected yet. There isn't even a solid trial date for this case at this point.
Right.
But the idea that we're working with here is simply that jury instructions are the way that a judge explains the case to jurors. Sort of, what's the law here? How should it be interpreted? The unusual part in this case is that Judge Cannon has seemed to adopt Trump's own interpretation of the Presidential Records Act. And she was using that concept to help, guide the jury towards making a decision on guilt or innocence. It was almost like she was nudging them towards an acquittal. Because if the stuff is indeed his own personal property, then the jury only has one way to decide, right? And to add something even more damaging to the case, once a jury is seated, the concept of double jeopardy comes into play, right? That's that you can't be tried twice for the same crime. So, if the jury
let's find a new
acquits
route.
Trump using these jury instructions based on his own defense, it's over. There's no appeal. There's nothing Jack Smith can do about it. Case closed, move on.
Got it. So, we're kind of back where we were a few minutes ago, which is to say, federal prosecutors really do not want Judge Cannon to in any way endorse this.
Correct. And so what ends up happening is they file a barnstormer of a response to Judge Cannon's request for jury instructions. One, you've got this whole thing wrong. Your idea that the Presidential Records Act has anything to do with this case is totally legally flawed. It's a fiction that Trump made up out of whole cloth, and it belongs nowhere in this case at all.
Okay, so what does Judge Cannon do with this perhaps not so diplomatic response from the federal prosecutors?
She kind of splits the baby. On the one hand, she gives Jack Smith a little bit of what he wants. She rejects altogether Trump's motion to dismiss the case based on the Presidential Records Act. And she agrees with Jack Smith that, like, this notion that Trump declared this stuff his own personal property, it's not enough just to kill the case before it even goes to trial at all.
Got it.
And yet, in a very prickly way in her order, she tells Jack Smith that she's going to keep this idea of using the Presidential Records Act in the jury instructions open. And so she's essentially allowing the possibility that there's still this sort of existential threat hanging over the case when it eventually goes into jury deliberations.
Got it. So now I'm curious, Alan, if this classified documents prosecution had proceeded down a traditional, normal path, when do we think this trial would have probably started?
Well, Judge Cannon had initially said it was going to start at the end of May, but then she very quickly kind of said that was not going to happen because she's got like 15 to 20 motions sitting on her desk that she hasn't decided.
Wow.
And, some of them could wind up being appealed. Mm-hmm. She could set hearings, right? 2 or 3 days to argue about this stuff. And so it's just, she has let a mountain of unfinished business complicate the trial schedule.
So that is how we arrive at this reality that Trump's strategy has already basically succeeded in keeping this case from unfolding before Election Day.
Yeah, and don't forget, it's not just in that case. 2 of Trump's other criminal cases also don't have trial dates yet. I mean, his case in Washington involving January 6th and the run-up to it, he used a kind of similar wacky motion to dismiss that he managed to get all the way up to the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. And, we're waiting for the Supreme Court to render a decision to see whether or not that case sneaks in before the election or not. And then in Georgia, where Trump has been charged also with election interference, he kind of capitalized on this romantic relationship that the prosecutor, Fannie Willis, had with one of her deputies and buried the judge with a bunch of motions claiming that there was a conflict of interest due to that relationship, and that ate up, a period of almost 2 months. And the way the system is set up, our presumption of innocence sort of permits this kind of the system. Obviously, to try everything they can to sort of defend themselves. Right. But if that fundamental part of our criminal justice system is being leveraged, perhaps in bad faith, there's really nothing that the government can do about it except go through it. That's our only choice in all of this.
Well, Alan, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Michael.
This week, Trump undertook multiple efforts to delay the one criminal trial scheduled to begin before the election, the hush money case.
And then exit
One of those
right.
efforts, filed on Wednesday, involved Trump directly suing the judge overseeing the trial.
Right.
So far, none of the delay tactics have succeeded, and the trial is scheduled to begin on Monday.
Turn right.
The Daily is supported by BetterHelp, committed to helping clients with issues
it for the Daily. I'm Michael Roboto. See you tomorrow.
Imagine transforming that old car in your driveway into compelling, community-focused journalism right here in Houston. Hi, I'm Eddie Robinson. It's easy. Just visit HoustonPublicMedia.org/support to explore all the ways you can give, including vehicle donation, employer matching, and estate giving. Every act of generosity counts, and supporting the news that matters. Give today.
Tomorrow, Friday, House Speaker Mike Johnson will travel to Mar-a-Lago to give a joint speech with candidate/defendant Donald J. Trump on election integrity. Trump likes Johnson a lot, but on Capitol Hill, Johnson is stuck. He wants to pass legislation to fund the war in Ukraine, but hardline members of his caucus are blocking him.
Mike Johnson has completely betrayed our conference, and his leadership cannot be allowed to continue going forward.
His main antagonist, Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, sent a letter to House Republicans on Tuesday tearing into Johnson for surrendering to Democrats, by which she meant working with them to prevent a government shutdown. Greene is threatening to call a vote to oust Johnson, and if she does, well, look at what happened to Kevin McCarthy.
The office of Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives is hereby declared vacant.
Coming up on Today Explained, Speaker Mike Johnson.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. The Biden campaign has launched an ad blitz in Arizona just days after the state Supreme Court reinstated a near-total ban on abortion. In the video ad, President Biden warns voters about the risk that a second Trump administration would pose to abortion access.
Because of Donald Trump, millions of women lost the fundamental freedom to control their own bodies. And now, women's lives are in danger because of that. The question is, if Donald Trump gets back in power, what freedom will he lose next?
The Biden campaign says the ads will target younger, female, and Latino voters in the state. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says the U.S. measles elimination status is under threat. NPR's Ping Wong reports the agency warns that declining vaccination rates and a jump in cases is putting some of the country at heightened risk of sustained outbreaks.
So far this year, measles cases reported in 17 states. That's far more than were reported in all of 2023, according to CDC. A new analysis from the agency finds that the risk of widespread measles is low, but outbreaks are happening and could continue in parts of the country with lower vaccination rates. If the current outbreaks last for more than a year, the U.S. would lose its measles elimination status as defined by the World Health Organization. In recent U.S. outbreaks, most measles cases were in people who are unvaccinated. CDC says vaccine coverage is insufficient to stop sustained measles transmission in at least 12 states and Washington, D.C. Ping Wong, NPR News.
Stocks traded mixed on Wall Street today. The Dow was down 2 points, the Nasdaq up 271. This is NPR News. Thick floating mats of seaweed are drifting toward South Florida and the Caribbean. Tom Bayless with member station WGCU reports researchers are upgrading their satellites to pinpoint the beaches that could be affected.
It's called the Great Sargassum Belt, and it's the longest algae bloom in the world. For centuries, the huge mats just swirled about the aptly named Sargasso Sea in the middle of the tropical Atlantic. Now, huge mats of sargassum are breaking off and riding the current to the west. Brian Barnes of the University of South Florida's Sargassum Watch System says they're improving satellites to predict where the algae will foul the beach.
We can identify the sargassum, know where the water is moving, and thus where sargassum will be moving, and
Go
make
straight
some
on.
predictions on which beaches will be impacted.
When perfected, it enables Barnes and his team to warn resorts to have their cleaning crews ready. For NPR News, I'm Tom Bayless in Fort Myers.
13 members of the Hasidic Jewish community in Brooklyn, New York have pleaded not guilty to charges stemming from their alleged role in a dispute over an illegal tunnel built under a synagogue. Prosecutors have accused them of reckless endangerment, criminal mischief, and interfering with police. The tunnel was built to expand worship space. This
yourself too busy to stay informed? We have 2 words for you. Hello, Houston, a daily newsletter delivered right to your inbox from Houston Public Media. Every morning, we bring you a quick recap of the previous day and a look ahead at the current day's news. Sign up today at houstonpublicmedia.org/Hello Houston.
Support comes from the Eternal Gandhi Museum, with a mission to advance peace
Turn left.
and inspire visitors to make the world a better place. Now open. Field trips and group visits available. More at egmh.org.
Support comes from Asia Society Texas, presenting Tsukumen Phenomenon, the culture and craft of Japanese ramen. This immersive ramen experience features a panel of discussion, demonstrations, and tastings prepared on site. More at asiasociety.org/Texas.
It's Today Explained. I'm Noel King with New Yorker staff writer David Kirkpatrick, who's been writing about Speaker Mike Johnson for years. So you might remember that when Johnson became Speaker, a lot of people were very surprised. They were like, who is this guy? David Kirkpatrick was not surprised because he'd interviewed Johnson.
Well, I'll tell you, to be honest, I left those conversations and I thought, wow, this guy is going someplace. At that time, he was nobody I'd ever heard of before, but it was clear that he was an extremely capable politician and a charismatic figure. He was a mover inside the conference, if you will.
I asked David for Speaker Johnson's lore.
So Mike Johnson grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana. His father was a firefighter whose specialty was hazardous materials. And when Mike Johnson was about 12, I believe, in 1954,
Go straight on.
his father was called to a fire in a cold storage facility, and there was a huge explosion. His partner was killed. Johnson's father was very, very badly burned across pretty much all of his body. He narrowly escaped from that fire by crawling through a tiny hole, reportedly just 12 inches wide, and he was a big guy. So around Shreveport, if you spend any time there, everybody knows the story. Pretty much everybody believes that only a miracle could have saved Mike Johnson's father. After that accident, as his father was slowly and painfully recuperating, he changed. He was advised to seek a place to live where the air might be a little bit drier, a little bit less humid for his recuperation, and that set him off somehow on a kind of voyage of discovery. And so while young Mike Johnson and his mother and his siblings became more and more committed to their evangelical church in Louisiana, his father drifted into kind of New Age circles and was married and divorced a few times and became something sort of very different and drifted away from the family. So young Mike Johnson went through the kind of shock and trauma of his father's accident, followed by his father's kind of abandonment. He becomes, for lack of a better word, a leader in his school community, the kind of boy who the teacher says, please you watch the class while I have to go run an errand. Somebody who, for better or worse, other children look up to, and he takes on that role. Within his own family, his mother begins to treat him like a kind of surrogate father to his 3 younger siblings.
Tell me about his time as a theater kid.
His friends from Shreveport say that back in the day, when he was in high school, he was almost as interested in theater as he was in politics. As you might guess from the current Mike Johnson, he ran for every student office he could and was involved in the statewide student government and all that stuff. But he was also a very avid actor, and when he was actually selected by the Republican members of the House to be the new speaker, his mother told an old friend of his, like, oh my goodness, I thought it was just another play that Mike was in. I could hardly believe that it was true.
So he likes theater, he likes politics, childhood politics, teenage politics. And then after graduating from high school, where does Mike Johnson go next?
So Mike Johnson goes to Louisiana State University. I believe he's the first in his family to attend college, and then on to Louisiana State Law School. and begins practicing law. You know, he's grown up in Louisiana as a Southern Baptist, and he is grown up committed to his family's church, very much in tune with the values of that church and of his state. And he's drawn right away to conservative Christian causes. He becomes a protege of Tony Perkins.
Americans understand the definition of a marriage is what it's been for 5,000 years. It's the union of a man and a woman.
He was now the head of the Family Research Council and was then a Louisiana state legislator and read out of law school. He's involved in very high-profile cases against Baton Rouge
abortion care. The state of topic today is, of course, Nazi war.
It was sort of an expose where people who had worked in the abortion clinic were trying to expose what they considered poor practices there, and that became the grist for some legal legislation to try to place restrictions on abortion clinics in the interest of safety, and also, of course, in the interest of reducing
There is no right to abortion in the Constitution, period. Not in its text, not in its structure, not in its meaning.
Turn right.
He was volunteering with an evangelical Christian group, and as a volunteer, he would drive an SUV into downtown Baton Rouge and pick up a bunch of kids from what he called inner city neighborhoods when he talked to me. And he got to know one young boy whose name was Michael James. One day he goes to pick him up and he learns from the boy's siblings that he's moved out, living in a trailer, I think crowded with several siblings and a single mother. And they say he's gone. And Mike Johnson says, as he told me, like, what's going on? Where is this kid? And they say, oh, he's out behind Walmart. So Johnson drives him there. Sure enough, this young man at the age of about 14 had set himself up in a car and was planning just to take up residence behind the wall. So Johnson says, you know, get out of there, get in the car, takes him home, and the young man with Mike Johnson and his young wife.
We took custody of Michael and made him part of our family 22 years ago.
Go
When we were
straight
just
on.
newlyweds. Michael was just 14 and out on the streets, nowhere to go, and on a very dangerous path.
He didn't live with him continuously. I think from time to time he would make an effort to move back in with his grandmother, always unsuccessfully. But he went back to the Johnsons and he lived with them off and on for I think 3 years.
Go straight on.
Before Mike Johnson moved back to Shreveport, his hometown, and his son, as Johnson refers to him, James, moved out on his own to Florida at the age of 18.
This story that you told in 2024 is a bit of a Rorschach test. How does the now adult Michael James, how does he tell this story when he speaks publicly?
He doesn't often speak publicly. He declined to talk to me, but the Daily Mail, the intrepid British tabloid, did reach him by phone at his home in Los Angeles, where he's now a father himself with a few kids. And he was very grateful. He feels like the Johnsons, Mike Johnson and his wife, really saved his life, that he would have ended up in prison or worse had it not been for the Johnsons' intervention. So I know a lot of people on the left are prone to all kinds of conspiracy theories about Mike Johnson and his adopted black son.
So how did you end up speaker? No one knows. And this is my adult black son. Also named Michael.
Hey guys, I'm his adult black son. I'm only 11 years younger than him, and I'm kind of a secret.
But the adopted black son gives Mike Johnson a lot of credit.
All right, so Mike Johnson is now a young lawyer. He goes on to have 4 children of his own, so add father to it. When does he add politician to the resume?
Well, I think if we're being frank, it was always clear that he was gonna end up in politics. You know, he went into practicing law as an advocate for conservative Christian causes at what is now the Alliance Defending Freedom. His colleagues there said even then they used to refer to him as the senator from Louisiana. His political interests and his political skills were evident from the get-go, and he was always sort of poking around in that direction. You know, it was not a surprise to see him later run for office, initially as a member of the Louisiana state legislature.
Turn left.
Louisiana is the latest state to introduce a controversial religious freedom bill.
Religious freedom and the protection of religious freedom against government intrusion is a state interest of the highest order.
So he ran for office around 2014. So that's a period when gay rights are a big issue around the country. The United States is moving towards legalization of gay marriage and acceptance of gay marriage. He was coming from a background as a conservative Christian legislator, and so some of his signature issues were opposing gay rights, and trying to put forward legislation that would protect, as he put it, conservative Christians from having to accept gay marriage.
None of us here in this warm, welcoming state are in favor of discrimination, but we are in favor of protecting our freedom.
It didn't become law in Louisiana, but that's what he was most known for. It's a winner for him. He's from Northwest Louisiana, which is the part of Louisiana that's culturally very much like Texas, a conservative, Protestant, Southern Baptist area, and he's very much in tune with the majority of his constituents in that district, and so he was, I think, quite popular and successful and well positioned to move on to national office.
The New Yorker's David Kirkpatrick. He'll be back with us. Coming up, Mr. Johnson goes to Washington.
Go straight on.
Today Explained is supported by Progressive Insurance. 4 walls and 4 tires protected. Customers can customize their insurance needs and protect what's important by bundling home and auto today. More at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Today Explained is supported by BetterHelp, committed to helping clients with issues ranging from relationship challenges and goal setting to grief and depression. Learn more at betterhelp.com/public.
This week, another whistleblower at Boeing came forward with damaging allegations.
In a mad rush to reduce the backlog of the planes, Boeing did not follow its own engineering requirements.
He also claims that the company retaliated against him when he raised his concerns. I'm Elsa Chang. Hear more about the latest allegations on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock here on News 88.7.
Support comes from Galveston Historical Foundation, presenting the 50th Annual Historic Homes Tour. Architectural history is shown through tours of private residences and special events. The first 2 weekends of May. GalvestonHistory.org.
And support for Houston Public Media comes from Comcast Business. From Main Street to Wall Street, Comcast Business provides business solutions ranging from cybersecurity solutions to round-the-clock partnership, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply.
No, I'm not an aide. I'm new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
I see. All right, who?
Mike Johnson. No one's going to forget that.
This is where it ends. It's Today Explained. We're back, as is David Kirkpatrick of The New Yorker, as is Speaker Mike Johnson. We're going to pick up his story in 2017. That is the year he gets into national office, and that is also the year that President Donald Trump gets into national office. What is that relationship like initially?
It's interesting that you should ask. When Donald Trump rode down the Golden Escalator and first appeared on the national stage, Johnson was very skeptical. He wrote on Facebook, this guy is problematic.
The thing about Donald Trump is that he lacks the character and the moral center we desperately need again in the White House. I'm afraid he would break more things than he fixes. He's a hothead by nature, and that is a dangerous trait to have in a commander-in-chief.
But, as the primaries went on, and as Mike Johnson himself entered the primary for a Republican congressional seat from Shreveport, he came around, and he became an early and steadfast Trump supporter. That class of lawmakers, all the classes of lawmakers who were elected in the Republican Party with Trump at the top of the ticket kind of bear the mark of Trump. They tend to be a little bit more Trump and a little bit less Reagan than their predecessors, and that's very much true of Johnson.
How does Johnson then begin to build his own political power in Washington?
So Johnson arrives in Washington with a lot of connections. because he's come up through the Alliance Defending Freedom, which is an increasingly important part of the Christian conservative movement. He was actually on a kind of leadership panel of the Southern Baptist Convention, which is the largest Protestant denomination in the U.S., advising the convention on politics. He was sort of one of the heads of its political arm. So he shows up really well connected on the right, especially the Christian right. And that's kind of his foundation. So early on, actually in his second term, he's elected the chairman of the Republican Study Committee. It's kind of a quasi-establishment conservative movement, and in fact includes a majority of Republican House members. So already in his second term, Mike Johnson is the chairman of a body that represents most of the conference. It's become a frequent springboard to leadership, and he's already clearly in the running. When you look on paper and when you lay out his career as we just have, he looks like he's on a rocket ship to the top and he's terrifically ambitious, which is true. But he comes out of his Southern and conservative Christian upbringing with a terrific set of manners. As some Democrats said to me, he is by far the most polite member of the far right that you will meet in the U.S. Congress.
Hakeem Jeffries and I are colleagues and friends and have a good relationship with him.
He has a very humble, deferential manner that he brings to his rise through Republican politics. And that sets the stage for 2020. After the 2020 election, when Trump becomes embroiled in challenging his loss, his defeat to Joe Biden, he reaches out right away to Mike Johnson, initially just to vent. But as the weeks go on, it becomes clear that Trump is calling on the Republican members of Congress to try to reject the outcome of the vote. This puts the Republican lawmakers in quite a bind, because Trump's arguments were mostly bogus, right? There's no evidence to show that the vote was rigged. So what is a thinking lawmaker to do? And in this moment, when Republicans in the House are feeling quite a bit of squeeze, right? Trump is demanding one thing and their constituents are all with him. And on the other hand, any sense of rationality or integrity is demanding something different. Mike Johnson presents a solution.
The argument that we presented to the court, which is our only avenue to do so, was that the Constitution was clearly violated in the 2020 election.
He says, basically, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, hey guys, we don't need to worry about Christian evidence because there's a purely legal, purely constitutional argument you can use to try to find fault with this electoral outcome. And that is that many states, because of the pandemic, took emergency measures to make it easier to vote. In fact, in many places, state officials, election officials, or secretaries of state, or even judges ordered or...
Sure, it goes. And I'm done with that. It's from Houston and all that. So,
Never mind. I'll find a new route.
This week is going to be easier for me to go through the what's there, so
Get ready to turn right.
That's right. All right, folks, let's get into driving and let's better move on.
Go straight on. straight on. Go straight on. Keep right, and then turn right. Turn right. Go straight on. Go straight on. Go straight on. Keep left, and then turn left. Turn left. Rerouting. Get ready to turn right. Turn right. Go straight on. right. Turn right. Recomputing. Keep right, and then turn right. Turn right. Finding a new route. Go straight on. Okay, let's find a new route. ready to turn right. Turn right. Keep right, and then turn right. Turn right. Keep right, and then exit right. Exit right. left. Go straight on. Get ready to turn left. Turn left. It's all over now. Ready to roll. and then turn left. Turn left. Go straight on.